Hi, everybody. Before we get to another great interview, the Two Opinionated podcast could really use your help. And it's easy, it's free. IMDb, which is the entertainment database, imdb.com, named us a top 100 podcast. We came in at number 82. That's a big deal because there's 15 million podcasts and growing. So to be named to anybody's top 100 list, pretty big deal for us. And the way you can help is to go to imdb.com, look up the Two Opinionated podcast, and that's it. Just bringing our page up. That traffic really helps us out. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. All we ask is that you subscribe. It's also free, but that really helps us to attract these amazing guests that we keep bringing on the program. And that's it. Two easy ways for you to support us, and we would really appreciate the help. Now let's get to that interview. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Two Opinionated. So excited today. I've got entertainment journalist, filmmaker Albert Lawrence with me. So welcome, Albert.
Thanks for inviting me, Michael. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you today.
I know you should be interviewing me. You've got the skills as the journalist. I'm just on here babbling about nonsense.
No. I've listened to multiple episodes of yours. You're doing more than just babbling about nonsense. So I got to give you your flowers, man. You're crushing it. And it's like you've had more than 800 episodes now, right?
We have, and thank you for knowing that. Amazing. I'm really proud of that, but most people are like,
No, okay, here, look, let's create some context here. These days, yes, anybody can pick up a microphone. It's never been more easily accessible for somebody to jump into doing interviews, to jump into doing podcasts, which I think is an amazing and it's a brilliant thing. But where you really get a chance to see someone's stripes is when you look at the consistency. Because there are many things I've picked up over the past years where I've gotten excited and I've started and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best thing ever.
Starting's easy.
Exactly. And then you a week or two later, you lose a little bit of that muster that got you going on. And then 2 months later, the equipment that you bought is sitting and collecting dust somewhere, with my guitar and with insert activity, my lacrosse stick, all those different things that are just gathering dust. But for you to actually pick something and to push and to go, even when there's nobody that's forcing you to do that, is a whole other level. So no, I got to give you props on that, Michael.
I really appreciate that because there is a even though I love it, it's the best thing I've ever done. I've had the best time with it. There is a little bit of work involved.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're talking about a relationship,
I've always said the best thing about podcasts is that anybody can do it. The worst thing about podcasts is that anybody can do it.
True. It's very true.
There's 15 million. It's probably 20 million now, but look, more every day.
No, but not all of them make it on the IMDb's top 100 list, though. So
you have been listening a little bit. It's like that guy won't shut up about it. So
no, it's great. Look, I would be shouting that from the mountaintops too. When I first got into this industry, I grew up in the church. So my dad's a preacher. And so I feel like I was so often, being taught to be humble, right? You don't want to show off. You don't want to really jump into pride and swim in that so much. But working in entertainment and living in Hollywood, and especially in this era now where there is so much having to do with your personal brand. If you want to grow, it's often not enough to just be able to just know your lines and show up. No, you got to know your lines, but then you also got to be able to promote and you got to be able to show that there's an audience. So there's so much. And a lot of that you don't get without being able to at least get comfortable with self-promotion. So you gotta put it on out there, because if you don't, there's so many other distractions and things.
Well, that's right. You're going to get drowned out.
Absolutely.
And it is something you have to get comfortable with. And I struggle with it, but you have to do it, and you got to do it consistently, or you're not going to stand out at all. You're just going to get buried.
Absolutely. And so then look, sometimes I feel like one of the words that we've been hearing a lot more over the past few years is cringe. cringe now, and cringe not even now just as a verb, but cringe as an adjective. Like, that's so cringe.
Right.
And so when looking at social media, looking at TikTok and Instagram, sometimes you can look and you'll see certain things where you're like, oh my gosh, like the fact that this person is doing that, it looks so desperate, it looks so cringy, like I could. But then you look and you see the numbers that thing gets. You get to see that, oh, this is a character that this person has created, that this person has made, and then you end up gaining a bit more respect for the fact that this person came up with this thing and is figuring out a way to use a medium that is free, that we can all be using, but they're using it to expand their brand.
And they're making a living off of it.
Making a living, like living comfortably off of it. And so I know that we only get a chance to see what it is that they put on camera. So we're not familiar always with like, what's the work that went into the creation of it? Like, what are the listless nights that they ended up going through in order to get there? But there's something to it. It's not for everybody, Michael, but there's something to it.
I love that. I love that because it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you may not understand what someone else is doing, you can still appreciate the fact that they're working hard at it.
Bingo.
Yeah. What was your father's denomination?
Yeah, Baptist.
Oh, yeah. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah. And he was like I always say, he is the old school kind of fire and brimstone Baptist preacher. And I spent a lot of time listening to his sermons, and it was back in those days. I always joked that I'd come out of church feeling worse than when I went in.
Man, Michael, I get you. So I grew up going to private schools, and I grew up in Virginia. And
West Virginia. So you're from this area. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yep. So so through going to school, one of the funny things for me is that some of my biggest nightmares were actually from things that I'd learned like in school or verses that I'd read in the Bible, because I would take those in my imagination, especially if you start talking about Revelation. Oh my gosh, like that used to be the scariest thing to me. This idea of like waking up and like everybody else is gone. Like I ran with that. And I think that I was a little young / like, I think that my imagination was a little bit too potent for me to be able to hear some of those scriptures and get some of those lessons without them haunting me some. But nowadays, like, I feel like, if you've got a sort of a traumatic experience, I feel like a lot of artists find ways to take those.
Well, they say you have to have it in order to be an artist.
Man. And because of that, now when I see certain things, like there was a show on HBO some years back called The Leftovers.
Oh yeah, I watched that.
So when I watched The Leftovers, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like really putting me in the mindset of Revelations. And so you get a chance to see these different things that maybe you thought were just very personal to you, that just like you were the only one that they scared. And now you get a chance to see other people take those things and use them in art forms, which kind of makes them a little bit more approachable and a little bit less daunting, because you know that you're not alone. So that's one of the things that I really do dig about art, period, now.
I think that's a great way to look at it. I love that. And art, it's so subjective, and it comes in so many different forms with that. And that's one, my wife's an artist. So I've as I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate art. I can't do any of it, but I can appreciate it. I look at some things and I may not even like it, but I can recognize the effort it took to make it. And so that makes me appreciate it, even if it's not really for me.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's the way that I watch the Olympics. Like I'm like, I have no idea what goes into the pole vault. I don't know what's going into this.
That guy pole vaulting, crazy.
Wild.
I don't know how people do that stuff. With the high jump, how do you make your body move like that?
How? Because I know that for me, people, when I think back to PE class. Like there'd be times where I'm going through an obstacle course and I'll like run on up and I know that I'm supposed to like tumble over this ball. And I feel like my body sometimes is like, no, self-preservation, do not jump over that ball. Like this is not for you. And then when I do it anyway, I end up regretting it. And so yeah, like for you to be able to get over that mental block that's saying like,
amazing.
It's
well,
hard.
and I was watching the young sprinter, the guy that was like 16, and he didn't run in the finals of the relay, but he ran early. And they're like, oh, he's had a terrible race. He's really put them in a bad position. And I'm looking, he ran it in like 9.7 seconds or something. It was insane. Yeah, and they were saying it was a terrible race because he was like 0.2 of a second slower than he normally is. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, he's still faster than like 99% of the planet.
Exactly. And when I was watching the men's relay and like the U.S. team ended up getting disqualified because, they held on to the baton.
Yeah, they screwed up the pass or something.
And I'm like, but that's such a minimal thing. That's like, and you've trained all these years for it. And just like this one little glitch will knock you out of the entire competition. I don't know. My heart hurts for
every time, even if I could care less about what they're doing.
Oh, for sure.
It still catches you just from the human element of it.
From the human element. And I think that, it's neat that even if you're not a major sports fan, I feel like the Olympics draws in just a massive audience and a massive crowd, because even if sports isn't something that you're super familiar with, you are familiar with stories, right? And so like narratives are what draw us in. And I think that they do such a wonderful job with the Olympics to introducing us to, past favorites, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, you got your LeBron James that are going to be there. You got your Simone Biles that you're rooting for. But then you also get a chance to meet new athletes, who've been training their whole lives, but this is the first time that we're hearing their name. So you get their story, you find out why are they there, and you get drawn on into those human interest portions of it.
Well,
and it's really hard to deny.
I saw one of the sprinters, it was from a different country, and they just ran in a heat. They had, it wasn't even the final, it was just a heat to get to the final, and they broke down in tears at the end of it, just because of the journey it took to get to the Olympics. Actually running on the Olympic track, that was enough for them. They're like, anything else is gravy, because just getting there was worth it.
Just getting there. And I think that no matter where we are in life, and depending on what your discipline is, it might look a different way. What your field of study, what your field of work, what your career is. But just like, I think that it's good to remind ourselves sometimes that we've come away. Like, you're not where you were when you first signed up. You're not where you were when you first put your application on in. And sometimes it can feel like we're going in circles sometimes, right? Especially if you're busy, like looking at the person in the lane next to you. But like when you look back at your own path, you got to give yourself some props. I'm preaching to myself right now. You got to pause and take a moment to celebrate before
I've given myself this pep talk. I know. You're like, nobody's listening. What am I even doing?
Right. But then it's funny, because then you'll go out, or you'll get that email, or you'll get that that social media comment, or that like, and then you realize that, oh, hold on, it feels like a solo venture sometimes, because I'm just like holed up in my office or in my studio at home doing this alone. But then when you peek your head out the window and you take a look at the world, and you realize that, oh, but hold on, like this is touching maybe somebody. Maybe it's just my cousin, but somebody is listening.
Somebody's listening.
Somebody's here. So fantastic.
So I got us way off track, Albert.
Oh, good. Let's go.
Let me back us up. But talk a little bit about what got you into the entertainment business and what it is you do, because I'm a big admirer of yours, because I think what you're doing journalistically in the entertainment world is something that I would love to do, but I'm an introvert. So my way of getting around it is to do the podcast, because I'm a little more comfortable, but you're doing it in person. So talk a little bit about that. What got you into it, and kind of what it is you're actually doing.
Oh man, Michael, you just set up like a tree with like 5 different branches within that one question. So let me figure out which branch I'm going to tackle first. Like I'll try to do this semi-chronologically, but you got to forgive me if we jump around different timelines, like a Marvel movie. So I first got into wanting to do entertainment because I'm an only child. And so growing up, being able to perform on stage or in a choir was my best way to be able to share with others, right? So I loved school, I loved church because of that, largely was because, oh, I don't have to be alone when I'm with other people. And so starting by doing that, by jumping into these group activities, and then like in school, getting super duper involved and trying just about every sort of extracurricular to see, is there some sort of like hidden talent here that I don't know that I have, right? Like, so I grew up watching Disney movies, and I grew up watching just like a lot of cinema. My grandfather was a big movie guy. And so one of the things I remember from movies is often seeing, there's this narrative that that somebody might have a hidden talent, and they've gone their whole lives without knowing that they've gotten this talent until they eventually have that one moment of recognition where something awakens it. And then, we've heard this tale several times. And so I grew up wondering, like, I just want to make sure that by the time I leave this earth, that there's nothing that's been like potential, but that has been untapped,
I love that.
So I feel like it's my responsibility to try to just figure it out.
No regret.
Oh, buddy, Michael, the amount of things that I tried, that it became very clear early on that like, oh, this isn't your thing. Like, this is not. So if you look back, just talk to my friends from middle school, from high school, ask them about all the sports teams that I joined and how splendid my performances were in those. Man, I was like, oh, I'm a tall kid. Maybe basketball is my thing. Nope. Figured that out really quickly. Oh, okay. Like I'm a larger guy. Maybe the football team. Nope. That wasn't great. Maybe lacrosse. Nope. Maybe track and field. Nope. Like, so I was able to, as they talk about in technology, sometimes you just want to fail fast, right? Fail fast.
That's right. Yeah. Get out.
Cross that off and keep on moving, right? And so I was able to cross those things on and off. But at the same time, as I was failing during those, I was able to continue to gain more and more appreciation for those that do excel in those different spaces. And so theater and film and television was a space where I was like, oh, hold on. Even when I fail on here, like even if I forget my lines on stage, even if I forget to move a prop to a right spot sidebar, I played Tin Man in high school, and I forgot to bring my oil can out and place it on stage with me. So when Dorothy was looking for the oil can in order to like lubricate my mouth so that I could, start saying more okay. Dorothy couldn't find it. And so she had to like run backstage and find the oil can and bring it back out. And so even during those certain moments where I'm like, oops, I just feel so alive.
Yeah.
And I don't mind making the mistake in the moment, because I've realized that when I'm on stage, if I do something that maybe wasn't on script, or I find myself forgetting a thing, I can improvise and I can make up a thing and I can just live on stage. Like when in doubt, let me just like jump into something natural and live and let an authentic moment come on through. And so because of all of that, I ended up working at my my school's television station in high school, like doing morning news stuff there. So then when I went off to college, I went to Yale University. And while at Yale, we weren't necessarily known for having the world's greatest film studies program or anything like that. Like, it doesn't, like, they don't tout it the way that NYU does, but we have a terrific theater program there. And the Yale School of Drama, which is the graduate school there, it's had wild alums like Meryl Streep, Lupita Nyong'o, just fantastic people.
Those small-time actors.
Small-time actor, Jodie Foster, so they've had like these really tremendous talents come on through. And so as an undergrad, like I would jump on over to the grad school spot sometimes, because sometimes they just needed, somebody to play a background role in a thing, or, like play an ensemble role in this theater production. And so I got a chance to study film in the undergrad and also theater there, but then also to play around with theater when the grown-ups would let me do that over in the theater side of things. And I started up a television show on campus. that was largely inspired by a show on MTV. So you remember a show called Cribs, MTV
Oh,
Cribs
of
back in the
course.
day?
Yeah. Yeah. You go get to see the fancy houses, of course.
Exactly. And so one day early on in my freshman year, when I was partying, going around to different dorm rooms as one does, I got this idea. I was like, well, what if we did a version of MTV Cribs, but it was all about dorm rooms and just like the different ways that people decorate their dorm rooms? Because, like the way that we would have it is in some of our dorm rooms, there might be 6 different people living there, but
Right.
everybody's from a completely different place. And so how does style look when you got this person from Minnesota and this
I love
person
that
from
idea.
Egypt and this person? How does it all come together? And so we called our dorm rooms suites. And so I called the name of the show Sweet Suites. And so every episode I go around and, explore that. And then I also had a spinoff version that we did that was about the dirtiest dorms on campus. And that was called Bittersweet Edition. And so I knew that I always loved making stuff, Michael. I love being able to pick up a camera and then like learning to edit on Final Cut Pro and to just post and piece the whole thing together. And so fast forward a bunch, I ended up moving on out to LA right after graduation. And I'd had an internship through the Television Academy Foundation. Those are the people who put on the Emmys. And so through that internship, through the people that I met there, that ended up helping me to land my first jobs out here. And then honestly, like, we can highlight different things depending on whatever your questions are, wherever your interest lies. But I jumped around from working at a station that only aired reality television shows. So I can tell you so many different things about American Idol and Real Housewives, man. So like I worked at a station just doing that. And then from there ended up moving on over to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers gave me my first opportunity to go down to San Diego Comic-Con, which changed my life. And
you got me there because that's on my bucket list to get to.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of conventions, but not that one.
When you come to San Diego Comic-Con, you are going to feel like, oh, I've found my people. Like you specifically are going to feel that way. Because like I'm looking at your background right now. I'm looking at the Incredible Hulk back there. I'm seeing Batman. I'm seeing Chewbacca. I'm seeing like these are your people down at San Diego Comic-Con, Michael. And so after that, I actually I did a pivot and ended up moving on over to work at the local news out here in LA, so ABC7.
Oh, nice.
And while at the news, that gave me a completely different journalism line, right? So reporting on things that aren't just Comic-Con, but just like really being able to be a part of the community. But then after that, I got picked up to work on a series on CBS called Innovation Nation, which is all about science and technology. So
I think that's a neat series because it actually teaches you some stuff.
You really do learn things, and it's very family centric. So anybody can watch this, from the grandkids to the grandparents. And so after working on Innovation Nation, I've been able to, continue to work on even more things in the tech sphere. Like that really ended up opening up the door for me to let people understand, like, oh, hold on, like Albert, like he can talk about technology, he can be interested in tech. And so now I'm a host on a podcast that IBM sponsors, and so it's all about
I was going to ask you about that because you're interviewing some pretty big names on there,
man. Like that podcast is really something phenomenal, and I keep on finding myself being thrust into areas that like I know something about, but that like I'm not an expert about. And so I'm continuously humbled by the different opportunities that have come about. And the great thing is, and you can relate with me with this as a journalist, is that my job is not to be the smartest person in the room. Like my job is not to be the person who knows the most about artificial intelligence or who knows the most about large language models. My job is to be curious. And that curiosity is what leads me to do research. But what takes some of the load off of my back is just knowing that, like, hey, I'm talking with somebody who is the expert in this particular thing. There is no reason for me to try to out-expert the expert.
No, it honestly helps if you don't know, because then you're genuinely asking questions.
Yes. And I honestly think that like our audiences, our listeners, our viewers, they can appreciate that because then they're coming in at a very similar level as I am. And I'm not just like spitting out jargon and talking like past them. I'm truly on the same playing field as the listeners are, as the viewers are. So we get a chance to learn together.
Well, you're kind of the spokesperson for the listeners.
That's absolutely it, you know, like we can and it's funny, D23 is for the big Disney Expo,
Yeah.
just wraps up this past week, and James Cameron came and started talking about Avatar 3, and so the word Avatar is still in my head. So as journalists, as interviewers, we get a chance to really be the avatar
That's right.
for
I
our
almost
listeners.
used that word, and I was like, "Nah, don't use that."
I felt it. I felt it coming through.
But that is exactly what we're, hopefully, if we're doing it right,
Mm,
we're asking the questions that everybody would be asking if they were in the situation where they were talking to that person.
that's right. And then you know what our job is next? To listen. Like
That's
to,
right.
to listen. And I think that over time, that's been something that I've appreciated more and more. I think when I first started, I thought that, okay, I've got to look smart, right? Like, and I've got to like have the most personality. Like, I've got to stand out by like asking the best questions and the most, and the most stunning and different things. And I kind of wear like the loudest thing. And then I think over time, you start to realize that, hold on, energy does not equal volume.
That's right.
You don't have to be loud in order to be energetic. You don't have to be the biggest person in order to still have a big energy about you. And I think that there's a confidence that comes along with that. Like there are some people when I watch them, like when I watch their performance style, when I watch their interview style, they actually kind of lean back a little bit.
Yeah.
And I always thought that like if I'm going to show you that I'm interested, I gotta
You got to
lean
lean
forward
in.
and like leave my mouth open. And I learned during Innovation Nation, my producer pulled me over after my second segment with him. He was like, "Hey man, I love that you're excited. Like like you're really bringing some great energy, but like when we're editing the episode, you're making it difficult for us to cut because as you're listening, you listen with your mouth open." And
Right.
so as the other person is talking, man, your mouth is just like hanging there, just like hanging there open, like catching flies. And so that's gonna look a little awkward if we're trying to cut back and forth in the
Right.
conversation. So like basically change your listening face or just be cognizant of the fact that you're listening, but you can close your mouth while you listen. That's one of the biggest lessons for me that I now take with me
Well,
everywhere
but
that I
did
go.
it mess you up though? Like at first, were you like overly aware of your mouth being open?
Absolutely did, Michael, because I think that I have a tendency to overcorrect. So if
Yeah.
you give me a note, I'm very open to criticism, but then once you give me that note, I really want to make sure that you never have to give me that note again. And I think like the background as being an actor is part of like what kicks in there. Like I want you as a director to feel as though like I heard you and like that I'm taking it in. And so because of that, like it's the only thing on my mind next, right? It's like, don't do that thing that they just told you not to do. Don't do that thing. And of course, what happens when we are trying to not do a certain thing, we start doing that thing, right? Like, I'm like, okay, don't listen with your mouth open. If you're doing it, and so it becomes unnatural for a moment, but it just takes time. It
Yeah, you
just
got to
takes
work at
time
it.
to massage it in. You work at it. You work at it.
Really, as an interviewer and a podcaster especially, all you have to do is be engaged. You don't
Mhm.
have to uh, control the conversation or anything really. You have to be paying enough attention so that you can respond to what the person you're talking to is saying. And I think that
Absolutely.
messes up a lot of podcasters because they get in their own head. They're trying to think about what they're going to say next, and they
Hmm.
miss what the person is saying. And you can tell that as a viewer. You kind of, because it doesn't flow.
Hmm.
That's for me. I tried pretty early on to get a handle on that, and sometimes I still over talk, but the majority of the time I think we're just having a conversation. So as long as
That's
I'm
it.
paying attention to what you're saying and responding, we're fine.
And Michael, as a part of that, different formats call for different things,
That's
right?
right.
So just as how different relationships that we have in our lives activate different portions of us, and we know that when we're around this group of friends, this element of us, right? Like this way of playing, this kind of joking, we do more with this group of friends because it's what ties us, what binds us there. Versus when we're with our families, that activates this other portion of us, because it's just the different roles and the characters that we play in these different portions of our lives. And it's okay. I feel like it's okay to say roles and characters,
Oh yeah.
because it doesn't mean that you're still not being genuine. It doesn't mean that you're still not being authentic. It's all a part of you, but you contain multitudes, and nobody in no conversation, and in my opinion, deserves to have like 100% of every single aspect of you thrown at it at once. No, that's a lot. That is a lot. Okay. And so you're picking, you choose which lane you're going to be in for the time. But as a part of that, like, I also think that different formats. So the way that you interview during your podcast, this is a lovely gift that you are giving to not only your guests, but also to your listeners and viewers, because you've mastered the art of the nice long form podcast, right? So like your episodes are what, like 30 to 45 minutes for the most part?
Yeah, maybe an hour at the most.
Maybe an hour some. And that's great. Like, that's just something that you could not do on radio, right? Like on standard radio back in the day, because you got to be thinking about commercial breaks and cutting on in and like ending on the stinger and this and that. It's harder to do something like this also on like live television, right? So like on the news, you need to have like these different bites. But on this particular format, it gives you the luxury of like digging in and playing, and we can have 5 different tabs of conversations open at the same time, because the listeners are here for it. Like, we're riding along with them in their cars. We're in their headphones as they're jogging at the gym. Like, they're here to hang out for a conversation. And so because of that, like, knowing your format and knowing the medium that you're there for, it also relieves you of having to do what might be a poor impersonation of what we saw the news broadcaster do, because these are just different formats.
I actually love that, because when we started, my son and I, the complaint we heard the most was, they're too long. It's too long. And admittedly, at that point, they might have stretched to an hour and a half, or maybe even 2 hours. Okay. Just having so much fun. So we learned to scale it back, and we do typically it runs a half hour to an hour, but that's still a long conversation when you're used to catching your interviews. Even on the talk shows, they're like 8-10 minutes at the most.
Absolutely.
And I personally, I love this format because you can have those conversations, and you can kind of just go where the conversation leads you, and you still got time to circle back and hit the points that you want to hit.
And the other beautiful thing is you can edit. You can trim this.
Right.
Like, it's not live. So if there is something where you feel like, oh, we missed this thing, you can call me up and be like, hey, Albert, I did want to talk to you about this one particular thing. Like, you got 5 more minutes so that we can like slide this on in, and we can do that if you want to do that. It's up to you. So, we don't have to be caged on in to an artificial set of guidelines when this is still the Wild West. This is still the Wild West. You can still do so many things. So and that's not an excuse to just like ramble, but at the same time, like, I'm listening to this podcast for a different reason than I'm watching a clip on YouTube of Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, right? Like, I know that those clips are going to be right. And I know that when I go on TikTok, I'm probably going to, like, within the span of an hour, I'm probably going to watch like 87 videos, right? But it's a very different reason, I think, and a very different set of needs that we're satisfying for folks.
So you've done a lot of interviews. You've done that for a while. I know that I've had there's not too many, but there's been a few individuals that I've had on the podcast that they were kind of like, I was a little intimidated. I was such a fan. I was such a fan that I was nervous, and that doesn't happen very often anymore because we've done so many. But there's still a few. Do you have that? Have you had those conversations where it's somebody that you're a fan of and you're a little nervous?
Yes, but I'm only going to say mine if you tell me yours first. I want to know who are some of the people.
Well, I'll tell you the one that had me the most nervous, and it wasn't a podcast, which maybe if it was a podcast, it would have been better. I got to moderate for William Shatner. So,
oh my gosh.
But it was, on a stage in front of an audience, and I was a nervous wreck with that. But had the best time. And honestly, with him, all you have to do is tee him up. And then, I'd ask a question, he'd talk for half an hour. And then I get to ask another question. So by the time it got back to me, I was pretty relaxed because I've been studying for 20 minutes,
Absolutely. No, first off, congratulations on that. Like that's such a major opportunity, especially for a Trekkie. Like that is
it was the best part about it was I knew he was coming. I knew the format. I knew he was going to need a moderator. And I wanted so bad to reach out. But I was like, no. I was like, can't do it. You just, let it go. And so I didn't do anything about it. And then the venue actually reached out to me, which kind of validated what we're doing, because I'm like, well, somebody's watching, or they wouldn't even know that I did this stuff. Wow. And they reached out to me, and I was like, I guess I could fit it in.
They could have called a lot of different people, Michael, but they chose you. They chose
me.
That's, to me, like that's one of the biggest compliments. My mom tells me that one of the greatest compliments is being invited back. And so whenever I do a thing and they circle back around and they're like, hey, man, can you come do this again next year? Or like, what are you doing next week? Because we want to, like, I think about my mom saying that, and it reminds me to never take for granted the fact that somebody has invited you to return. That's whether they invite you to return.
Obviously, they liked what you did before. They wouldn't.
Absolutely. So that's fantastic. So okay, William Shatner, that's a big one. For me, similarly, Oprah Winfrey was a major one for me, and it happened so unexpectedly and quickly. So I was backstage doing interviews at the Emmys one year, and Oprah had just presented an award to The Handmaid's Tale. And she walked, so I got word that, hold on, Oprah's about to walk backstage. There's no guarantee that she's going to stop for an interview, but she might. And so I'm standing back there with my microphone, the camera's right there, and it's like I'm the only interviewer back there in this position. And she walks off, and she walks over to the camera, because there's the big light there. She walks into the light, into the camera. I asked for the interview, and she just starts dancing on camera. Like, she dances into the interview as I'm like introducing her. And she, like, I feel like I don't even think that I had to ask more than 2 questions. I think I like asked 1 question, and just like you said with William Shatner, like, Oprah doesn't need you to tee her
up. That's right.
Like, the camera's there, the microphone's there. She knows what she wants to say, and I feel like I served as a really great mic stand. I feel like that was my great moment. It was like, I'm just gonna hold this mic here for you.
Prop, I know.
Exactly. And just like let the moment happen, and don't try to force a funny thing. Don't try to force a clever thing. This is not the time. Like, I'm just gonna be here and
be present.
Just be present, man. And I was present for that gift, and I will never forget it. And another person for me that really stood out. Actually, I got like 2 more quick questions.
Yeah, get me. Oprah's tough to beat, though.
Oprah's really tough to beat. But I'm going to try. Denzel Washington was another one who it would just. So I was interviewing Denzel, we were doing a virtual interview. So actually, I was sitting in this exact same spot. And he clued on in. He chimed in because he was there to promote his new movie at the time, Macbeth. I think it was The Tragedy of Macbeth for Apple TV Plus. And as soon as his face popped up on the screen and my face popped up on the screen, he starts looking at my background, and he's like, dude, like, the way those lights that you have, like, I really like those lights. And I'm thinking, hold on, is Denzel Washington like actually complimenting me on like this little setup that I put up in my, in my room at home? Like, he's been on such tremendous sets, and he's been having like interview after interview today. So he's like taking out the first part of this interview to talk about these lights. Okay, cool. So I was already feeling great at that point. But then I was talking with him about the sort of energy that I felt like he was bringing to the role in Macbeth. And I told him, I said, hey, you play a king in here, but you've still got such an essence about you. It was like, you really imbue this role with like a regal swagger. And he heard those words, Regal Swagger, and his eyes lit up like these lights behind me. And he's like, hold on, Regal Swagger. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I love that. I'm taking that. And I said, you can have it. He goes, from now on, I'll no longer be known as Denzel Washington. I'm going to be known as the artist formerly known as Denzel Washington, Regal Swagger. And I was like, oh, man. So he was such a generous,
what a great interview.
interviewee, And so for me, Michael, I feel as though sometimes it's those people who we placed up high on a shelf.
Yeah.
Some people say never meet your heroes. I disagree. Though I've heard stories from others about other folks that wish that they wouldn't have met people that they admired. But like for me, I haven't met one person yet who's honestly let me down. That
That's
isn't to
awesome.
say that I haven't been embarrassed by some of the things that I've said during the interviews, but like I feel as though people have been very generous to me along the way, and I just always want to take that as inspiration and then like reflect that same level of generosity that people have given me and throw it right back at others.
I say I love that.
Mm.
And one of the things that helped me with Shatner was that they show Wrath of Khan, and then
Mm.
he comes out and does a Q&A. That's the format.
Oh.
So while the audience is watching Wrath of Khan, I was having dinner with him. It was just the two of us, just us at a table having dinner,
Oh.
and he was just a guy. He was asking about my family. He was telling me about his dogs. He's just a guy. Soon as we step on stage, I mean, it's William Shatner.
Yeah.
It's a complete transformation. And
Absolutely.
that spoke to me. It really kind of demonstrated to me that we're all just people.
That's
We
it.
put these guys up on a pedestal and stuff and get ourselves all nervous and worried and stuff. We're just people.
That's
They've got more experience at what they're doing, so they're comfortable. But that helped me because from then on, I just treated people like it's just a person. I may
Absolutely.
be an admirer or a fan, but still
Mm-hmm.
a person. And that got out. It also didn't hurt that like my entire family was the front row.
Oh,
It
okay.
hooked me up. I was like, how? Yeah, I was like, they're like, do you need a ticket or two? And I was like, I could use like 12. They basically gave us that front row. And I was so nervous being on stage, but that's all I had to do was just glance down the front row. And it's my kids, my wife, parents, all that stuff kind of cheering me on, got me through it.
That's a tremendous hack right there. Pro tip, stack the deck. You stack the deck with your people, so you can't lose with those people
No,
right
they're
there.
going to cheer regardless. They're going to laugh regardless.
Absolutely. I love it.
Well, and you mentioned those moments when you're interviewing and you say something that you would like to have back, or you maybe you fumble it, or I've had my moments. They're
Mhm.
so painful.
Oh, they hurt.
You listen to yourself like I make myself listen to every episode because I'm trying to get better. But do you do that as an interviewer?
Right. So during a lot of my interviews, if they are interviews that I am also producing, then I do have to go back and actually listen to every single sound bite, every single
Yeah.
frame, every single second, because I'm editing it, right? And so like I've got to trim it. And then when doing that, you just end up being, or I end up being my harshest critic, because like I'm seeing, oh, the way that my eyes are looking at that day, like, oh, it looks like I didn't brush my hair, my beard, and that, like, oh, my button on the shirt is this. So like I'm looking at things that nobody else is caring about.
No, nobody pays
Um,
any attention to that stuff. And for the most part, they're probably not even watching. They're listening.
they're listening. They're probably just listening. And so yes, I have gone back and I have watched and I have heard, and I given a little time, it ends up being the funniest thing. And
Yeah,
given a little time, you end up realizing that, oh, this is something that I can now use as a talking point in my next interview.
that's
I
right.
can use this moment. So even if I don't put this particular clip up online because it's just too embarrassing, but like this is something that one day when I'm talking with one of IMDb's top 100 podcasters, I'll be able to drop this anecdote in, and this will
That's
make
right.
it seem as though I'm an interesting person. And so you get these moments in, and they're golden. So I know that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind
Yeah.
is a movie that I really enjoyed. But like, the idea of being able to erase a memory, the idea of just like not having a recollection of a past moment or like a traumatic or painful thing. I feel like a lot of times as humans, we have that desire. There are things that like in the
Yeah.
past I've wished like in the moment. Please, if I could just like wipe this out,
Right.
hypnotize this moment out of me, that I would choose to do it. But if I do that, then I do get a chance to like I lose the joke,
Yeah.
like I lose the opportunity for growth. I lose that if I don't actually have some sort of recollection of when I went wrong or when
Yeah,
I
because that is when we grow.
that's
Is
when I
we screw it up and then we grow
grow.
from it.
And so I've started like trying to try to include some of those more vulnerable moments,
Yeah.
whether it's in stories that I'm telling, or whether it's in clips that I'm putting up on social media, or whether it's just like in a caption for something, or whether it's just in a conversation that I'm having with a friend, but to let the artifice drop let the artifice of like, oh, I'm just so prepared all the time and I'm just so well manicured all the time, like let that drop, because I do think that also allows people to connect with you in a true way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. With the podcast, I mean, we edit, but we
Mhm.
leave a lot of stuff in there that
Mhm.
is basically us screwing up.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of people they kind of like that. They're just like, oh yeah, these guys again. Yeah.
It's great because then they get a chance to like know your ticks, right? Or like know specific mannerisms of yours that if you were to completely polish it up, it could seem so sterile and it
Yeah.
could just
Yeah,
seem
that's
like
right.
devoid of personality. And I feel like our hiccups and our like sometimes our literal hiccups like are a part of what grounds us. And we need those connective points.
Agree. Agree. Yeah, it humanizes you.
It does. It
Yeah.
does.
What was it like the first time you went to the Emmys?
Mm,
Well, that's
mm,
kind of a bucket list item for a lot of us. We all watch it on TV and it looks so glamorous. And what was that actually like being there?
man. So I remember it so well. The first time that I went to the Emmys, since I'd been an intern through the organization that puts the Emmys on, uh, and I'd always let this organization, let the Television Academy know when I was doing other things. So like when I started up my YouTube channel and was doing interviews
Yeah.
there, and I would go to different places. And so eventually an opportunity for they just really wanted somebody to be someone that the main host of the backstage stuff at the Emmys could bounce things off of, right? So kind of like a little sidekick. And so my job when they told me to go was I was going to hang on out where the main backstage host was going to be. And the backstage host was going to be interviewing every single person who won an Emmy as they came on through. And
Right.
my job was just to hang on in there so that during the moments in the show, because it was a live stream, during the moments in the live stream where it was lulling, like there wasn't a winner coming on back, then I could just step on in and we could banter, right? Like maybe have
Yeah.
some
That
trivia.
sounds like a pretty good gig.
Great gig. Great gig. Look, I was just happy to be in the room, right? But what ended up happening during that gig was there came a point in the show where our host couldn't be two places at one time.
Yeah.
And so while he was interviewing people, there was someone else who was going to be coming off stage. Like there was a rumor that Matt Damon was going to be in the building.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, if Matt Damon's not going to be coming up to the space where the winners go, because Matt Damon's just here for a bit with Jimmy Kimmel. Albert, like we'd love to see if we could just like send you downstairs real quick where Matt Damon's going to be and see if we can like grab a quick interview with him there. And so that gave me a chance to step on out from the sidekick role, which again, I was just like very happy to be there, and to like do a little bit with Matt Damon. That Matt Damon moment happened and it was spectacular, Michael. Like that's a clip that I'm still proud of. Like, and I was like, hold on, am I even supposed to be here? No, I guess I am. I was told to be here. And so after that, the next year, that gave me a little bit more to do on
Right.
the show, right? And then the year after, more and more. And so this past year, they had me as the guy who interviews the people who win their Emmys. So this was my first year being the backstage host for the Emmys. So
Amazing.
as people get their trophies, and by the way, the gentleman who they had me as the sidekick with when I first started. His name is Mark Istook, and Mark is phenomenal. He is such a generous host. So he's someone who like guided me through and gave me tips when I was his back, when I was his sidekick. And so I really
I
appreciate
mean, that's a
that.
big deal because a lot of people don't do that. They're
Oh my
only
God.
worried about themselves and they
Oh
don't
my
help
goodness.
out. That's a big deal passing that on.
It really is a big deal. And Mark is amazing. Like Mark, I think Mark just won an Emmy like last year or something for something. So it's like it's amazing when you see people who are generous, when you see people who are kind with their gifts, when you realize like, oh my gosh, like this just ended up making room for him to do other things. Like this like ended up making room for him to like excel in another space. And so I love it when people who are kind and people who are generous get a chance to continue to just like reap rewards and
Yeah,
continue to
thanks.
grow in their space. So shout out to Mark. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to work with him.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, good for him and good for
Yeah.
you because we've all been in those situations where maybe the person we're working with or working for not the best.
Oh man. Oh, like, and we see movies and we see television shows about just that, right?
Yeah,
About that, like the rat race, and people feel as though there's only room for one here. So, like, I gotta make sure that I burn the trail behind me so that nobody else can get to where I'm at. And we all know how that turns out, Michael. Like, it never works out
no,
well for that person because eventually the cream is going to rise. Like,
that's right.
and unless you've also built great relationships with the people who are working around you, you're going to fall. You're going to fall.
Yeah, you absolutely are. And it's probably going to be in front of a bunch of people that are happy that you're falling.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. Yes, yes, yes. We've seen this script. We've seen it. Yeah.
Was there someone that you were supposed to interview that
Mm.
it didn't work out that still
Ooh.
sticks with you?
Oh, someone who I was supposed to interview that it didn't work
Any
out.
big fish that got away, let's say.
Right. Um, it's funny because I feel like recently there are probably a couple people who I've prepared, like done research to interview. And then in the moment, they just weren't, I wasn't able to do it because they like walked past. Okay. So if you think about, so red carpets are places that can be so full of potential and also so full of disappointment.
Yeah.
Because on a red carpet,
But so
unless you're with
fast and it's a short space and so many people.
so many, and there's like, unless you're one of the major outlets that are there, there's little to no guarantee that you're going to get the stars of the movie or the stars of the TV show, or for that matter, like that you're going to get anyone. There's just like no promise because people come late, people come do their one interview and then they move on. So when I first was starting out, I remember that like the MTV Movie Awards was one of the first carpets that I did, and this was for like an outlet that I had made up. And so I got placed pretty like far down the red carpet line. And so as people were coming on in, like that's where you hear everybody yell folks' name like Will or Martin, and they don't like they can't stop for everybody all the time. And so I believe that one of the first people who I saw there was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could talk to this guy, but it just didn't work out, was Will Smith. And
Oh boy.
I like Will Smith is still, he is like at the top of the list for me in terms of who's someone who I haven't spoken with that I would love to have an interview with. And I'm like, and ideally, like, so if I get to choose, it's going to be a sit down interview. It's going to be something that also has an element of playfulness and fun
Yeah.
within it. but like something where we can take our time, and where it doesn't have to be as quick as a red carpet interview. So don't get me wrong, I'll definitely take a red carpet interview with Will tomorrow. But if I get to have my choice, if I have
Yeah,
my
yeah,
journey,
you get your choice here.
then I'm sitting down, I'm talking with Will, because I just find him to be such a remarkable creative, and someone who has come so far from where he began, and not without trials along the way. But I just feel like he has so much to share and to say that he maybe hasn't yet. And so, like in years to come, I think that we're going to learn even more about Will Smith that's kind of broadened the scope
Well, he
of
definitely at the forefront of a lot of our minds the last couple of years.
so much. Like there has been like a character shift for a lot of people in terms of how they perceive Will, but like I'm just still so inspired by him,
Oh, he's
and
such a talent.
such a talent. Yeah,
Yeah.
so he's
Well,
had
if you run into Jennifer Garner, because that's the one I've been chasing for 5 years, because she's literally from right here where I'm at.
oh my gosh.
She comes here all the time. I'm always chasing her, trying to get her, and
Oh,
nothing.
okay, hold on. How close have you gotten?
Not very.
Not very close.
And, well,
Okay.
here's the thing though, is I've missed her. Like she'll be here in town, and somebody will call. Hey, she's over here at the bookstore and stuff. So I've made a few of those trips. Let's see if I can run into her. Nothing. But it took me 5 years just to get her people to answer. Like I tried so many different approaches, couldn't get them to answer. Well, I finally got them to answer this year. It was a no.
Okay, but you at least
I
got
got to the point where they responded. So now I'm like, matter of time. I'll get her.
like they know that I exist now.
They know I exist. And at
Step one.
some point, she'll become aware that there's a podcast in her hometown trying to get her on, and it'll happen. I believe that. But if you happen to run into her, maybe put in a word for me.
Yeah, I'll holler at her. And it's funny because she's now enjoying this whole other portion of her career where, hold on, you saw Deadpool and Wolverine? Did you see
Yeah.
it? Okay.
She still looked pretty good in the costume.
She's still great. Exactly. I'm like, okay, Electra, I see you. And so, like, because of that, I feel like there is a whole new group of people that's getting a chance to experience and to learn more about who Jennifer Garner is. I feel like there's probably an age set of folks that only know her from is it Capital One?
Yeah, Capital One.
That like know her from the Capital
What's
One.
in your wallet?
Right, what's in your wallet? You know what I'm saying? But they don't know that, like, oh no, this is Alias that we're talking about over here. This is Electra. Like, this is Jennifer Garner. This is 13 going on 30, which is one of my favorite rom-coms. I love 13.
It's a great movie.
It's so good. It's so good. Jennifer Garner, Mark Ruffalo. It's amazing. Anyway, but yeah, so shout out to you. Shout out to Jennifer Garner. Let's make that happen. Michael, I gotta keep my eye now on the feed so that I can see when you get Jennifer Garner.
It's gonna happen. I'm manifesting it. It's gonna happen. I believe that once she's aware, she'll do it. Because you know how that goes. Publicists, managers, and stuff. They're gatekeepers. They're
absolutely.
I'm not upset about it. I get everybody's trying to talk with when the really famous. Everybody's trying to get them in it.
Everyone.
So you got to have a gatekeeper. I'm like,
but you got it.
Distance. And I'm polite. I'm not. I'm just like, hey, thanks for answering. It's so great to get a response.
That's right. Like, you were gonna just continue to like knock on that wall, and like the more that you continue to like share your stats and share your connection,
you never know. At some point,
you're gonna interview someone who's like worked with her that is gonna be able to put in a good word for you.
I thought I had her. I had Greg Grunberg was on. He worked on Alias with her.
Yeah,
and I was like, this is it. And he even said, he's like, I'll put in a call for you. I was like, that's all I'm asking.
Greg Grunberg, he's such a man of the people.
He's a good guy.
Right? I feel like he has a lot of currency within the geek sphere. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Within the nerd sphere. Like he is a king at Comic-Con.
Oh well, and he's pretty nerdy too. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he does a lot of his roles are just because he's a fan of whatever the show is or whatever. I think
Absolutely.
that's cool.
Yeah. He was on Heroes, right? He was like
Yeah, yeah, he was on Heroes.
Heroes. Yeah, I remember enjoying him on
Lost.
that.
You know, he was the
Oh,
pilot for
Lost.
Lost.
Oh, oh. Lost. It's funny. Sometimes I wonder, and I think I kind of know the answer to this, but like, are we always aware of how special and how iconic of a moment that we're living in when it's happening in real time? And I think when Lost came out, which I want to say was maybe like 2004,
That
I
sounds right.
don't
Yeah.
like I don't know if we understood how much that was going to change the television landscape.
He really did.
TV has never been the same. Like I Lost was amazing, man. Amazing.
Lost to me, even though it wasn't a bingeable show at the time, it
Mm-hmm.
kind of was at the forefront of the binging stuff because
Mm.
that was the show. Like if you were going to binge one, Lost was it at that
Lost
time.
was it.
It was
Lost.
just it happened to be released weekly at the
Yeah. And we had to wait for it. And like
yeah.
Lost knew how to have those cliffhangers, and we can just see the Lost DNA in so many of our favorite big shows
For
now.
sure.
Like I mean, just even the way that you'd have the flashbacks that were like integrated and woven into, oh man, it was so innovative.
It was good. It was
Yeah.
good. Well, Albert, thank you for taking some
Oh,
time. We could talk all night. I'm having such a
so
great time,
Michael.
but I just need you got to come back.
I would love to come on back. I really do appreciate you for sharing your space with me. Thank you for sharing your energy. One last thing, like I think that it was Oprah who said this, or she was probably quoting someone else, but the idea that we have a lot of resources in our lives, depending on what we do and where we are, but like one of the resources that is the most limited that we can't get back is time. And so the fact that we choose to spend time with who we choose to spend it with really matters and says a lot about
I
us. So
love that.
thank you for choosing to spend your time with me. And also thanks to your viewers and your listeners that are also chosen to spend this much time with us as well.
Well, yeah, and ditto, right back at you because this has been terrific for me. I've had the best time. A couple little things though before I let you go.
Yeah.
Anything that you're currently working on that we can keep an eye out for?
Yeah, it's funny. Tomorrow, the day after, I head to New York. I'm going to be doing some interviews with the cast of Beetlejuice.
Oh, how
So
exciting!
I'm prepping some
Like, are we talking? You getting Keaton in there?
I'm getting Keaton. I'm getting Keaton. So I'm doing my homework now.
Oh my
Trying to like
gosh,
get
man,
this right.
he definitely is on my bucket list.
Oh, he is there. He is there. And so I want to get that right. Monica Bellucci,
Oh,
Jenna Ortega. So it's gonna be a fun interview, and I just want to make sure that I nail it. So I'm getting ready for that. But then also next month are the Emmys. The Emmys are coming on up, and so I'll be backstage again for the Emmys. So I'm watching a
crazy
lot
that
of
they're
television.
here already.
Man, like I can't. So it's so funny because we already had one Emmys this year because they got pushed back from last year because of the
That's right.
strikes. And so this is going to be that year where we have two Emmys. I don't know. It feels like we just had the other ones in like were they January or February?
Yeah, it was early in the year.
Earlier in the year. But yeah, now so September we've got another round coming on up. So I'm watching a lot of TV for that as well too.
Let me ask you a question.
Go
Let me
ahead.
ask
Yeah.
you a question because you're Emmy savvy now.
Yeah.
So, do they really have people that come and fill the seats if somebody gets up to go to the bathroom?
There are seat fillers. Seat fillers are a thing. Seat fillers are a thing. And it's funny because I've actually been a seat filler for other shows before. Like back in the day, the American Idol finale, I was a seat filler for that. Just different live shows or even live to tape shows where you gotta have the space looking full. I've been a seat filler there. So I believe that there are seat fillers at the Emmys. Same thing with the Oscars. I think like for all these big shows, they got
Yeah, I
some.
love that. Who was the person like when you were on or around American Idol?
Yeah.
Who was the one that you're like, that's the one? Even if
Oh
they didn't
man.
win, was there one person that stood out in your
Oh
career?
gosh, American Idol was so much fun. Um, let's see. So I went to the live finale the year that David Cook and David Archuleta were
Yeah.
there. I don't know if you remember them, but
I remember them. Yeah.
and so like David Cook ended up winning that year, but I remembered that that Archuleta had a ton of fans,
Yeah.
especially like a ton of younger fans. And so it's been interesting to see, like where they've gone and whatnot. But I wasn't there during the early seasons with like Kelly Clarkson
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Jennifer Hudson and Fantasia and
Carrie
Bruni.
Underwood was in that
Oh my
one.
gosh, and Carrie Underwood. But I feel like this is like probably like some of the trivia that I'm most confident in is like being able to like list and talk about the American Idol contestants from like season 1 through probably about like season 7 or so.
Yeah.
Because I was very into certain things like the kickoff, like I'll say the kickoff song, but like the going away songs that they would play at the end. So every
Oh yeah.
episode somebody would get eliminated, every week, and
Yeah.
so every season they pick a different song that's going to be sung over that closing montage as you're saying goodbye to the person. So like one year, I'm sorry, one year it was this song called like Hollywood is Not America. And so it's so sad because you're hearing this thing, you're talking about like how this person has to go back home and like in the narrative of the song, and you're watching it over this package of somebody who like sang their heart out over the past 13 weeks and has to go. So like I love those little flourishes that production can put onto a thing. So yeah, American Idol still for me one of the great
I love that.
live talent shows. Yeah.
Love that. So the last thing, Albert, before you go,
Yeah.
is where can we find you on social media?
Yeah. So you can find me at Albert Talks. So
Oh, I like that.
ALBERTTALKS. And that's where you can find me on Instagram, on TikTok, also my YouTube channel. But if you want to go to my website, it's just albertlawrence.com.
Yeah, you've got a pretty good website. Do you do that yourself, or do you have somebody working for you doing it?
Thank you. So for the longest time, I've just like done it myself. But this past year, I finally teamed up with a web designer in order to knock that out and to give it a real refresh. So I can't take credit.
It's a lot of work.
It's so much work.
It's hard to set it up, but that's the easy part. It's maintaining it that takes the time.
That's the part there, Michael, is the maintaining it. And so I didn't want to start up something that would be too difficult for me to maintain because I will tap out. Like if something just starts to get to be more trouble than what I think that it's worth, I just let it go. So yeah.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
Well, Albert, open invitation. Anytime, please come back on. It's been incredible. I've had the best time.
I appreciate you so much. This has been a real gift. So congratulations. And I know you're on the way now to your 1,000 episode mark. So keep it up, Michael.
I told that to my son yesterday. We were doing some nerdy stuff in the studio, and I told him that. I was like, 1,000's in sight.
It's there.
It'll probably take us another 10 months or so to get there, but we'll get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll celebrate. We will celebrate that.
That's it. I'm looking for that 1,000th episode guest. So
the initials might be JG.
Never know.
No.
He fit right in there.
right in. Just.
If you're talking to Keaton,
oh yes,
see if you can slip in a little Johnny Dangerously reference.
Oh, okay.
Cool. That's one of those. It was always one of my favorite movies of his, but nobody ever talks about it.
No, you know what? I'm gonna put that on the list. As I like do this extra homework because I need to watch Beetlejuice again in order.
Yeah, you definitely want to do that before you talk to him.
Absolutely, got to watch that again, and then go on through. And that's the other funny thing about these press junket interviews is, sometimes you're getting maybe like 4 minutes in with the person, and so you might get 1, 2, maybe 3 questions, but that's like a stretch if you're gonna get 3 questions. And so you try your best to just like line it up and at the same time also be listening, because sometimes they'll drop something that's like way better than what
that's right
prepared for.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying. If you're not engaged and paying attention, you'll miss those moments.
You will miss it because you're so set on getting that clever question out that you've spent all week writing, and they just like all you needed to do was push this one little button that they exposed for you to push. And if you miss that, then you miss the opportunity. So you want to pay attention.
Yeah. Well, best of luck, Albert. That's amazing.
I appreciate it.
The podcaster in me is celebrating for you. That's
yes. Thank you. I'll try to make you proud.
All right, Albert, hold on one. Albert Lawrence, what a great guy, and apologies that we went a little long. I got done saying we don't go past an hour, and then we went past an hour by a little bit. But I hope you enjoyed that. Terrific conversation. If I was an actor, and I never will be, but if I was, I would talk with Albert. I think he's so easy to talk to. He's positive. He's got a great personality. He shares. He listens. I have no doubt that there's a reason that he gets those accidental interviews with really famous people. Because why wouldn't you want to? He's friendly. He's inviting. That was awesome. Hope you enjoyed that, Albert Lawrence. Make sure you're looking for him at the Emmys. With that, I always wondered about the seat fillers. There's the Seinfeld episode where Kramer is working as a seat filler, and I was like, is that real? I guess that's actually a thing. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. If you're finding us for the first time, so happy that you're here. Albert was nice enough to promote us a little bit. We put out episode 822, I think, yesterday. Probably put out an episode either today or tomorrow morning as well. You can find all of those audio and video versions on our website, meistercon.com. So definitely check that out. If we're doing something in studio, if we're going on location, maybe we're showing up at the Emmys. You never know. If we're going to a convention, anything we have going on will be on the website, meistercon.com. Love the kind of behind the scenes looks that Albert was giving us, and we talked a little bit about those missed opportunities. I meant to mention to him the one that really was the kind of gut punch to me is we were set to have Olivia Newton-John on the podcast, and she had recovered enough to where she thought she'd be able to do an interview, and then she passed, and that I was just devastated. I'm such a fan of hers, and she's such a generous person. She was willing to come on the podcast, and it just didn't work out. So that was one for me that is kind of bittersweet. It was such an honor for her to agree to come on, but then we didn't get the chance to talk. So that was kind of mine. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. Before I forget, if you go there, please subscribe. Really would appreciate that. It's free, but those subscriptions really help us out, so we would appreciate that. Thank you guys so much, and thanks for hanging in there. Appreciate you. Till next time. Bye, everybody.